Have you ever tried to be, like, just deeply, profoundly mindful? You know, maybe you just finished reading some life-changing book on Stoicism, or you spent a whole hour on a meditation cushion genuinely connecting with the universe.
Right, feeling totally enlightened.
Exactly. And then 10 minutes later, you absolutely lose your temper because your Wi-Fi dropped during a video call.
Oh, yeah. The classic modern meltdown.
Or maybe you were consciously breathing your way through this beautiful morning, and then you just totally lose your mind because you forgot your grocery list and had to walk all the way back to the car in the rain.
It happens to all of us.
It really does. It's this ultimate collision. We have these high-minded, pristine spiritual aspirations, and they just repeatedly crash headfirst into the incredibly mundane, high-definition frustration of being a biological human being.
Yeah, I mean, it is the great humbling mechanism of the modern seeker. We curate these identities as expansive, enlightened, totally unbothered individuals.
Oh, totally. We want to be the chill person.
Right. We consume the literature, we understand the concepts intellectually, but the reality is that our nervous systems, which are deeply conditioned by this hyper-accelerated world we live in, are often just like one buffering video or one misplaced set of car keys away from a total system override.
A complete crash.
Exactly. We mistake the intellectual understanding of peace for the actual physiological embodiment of it.
And that gap, right, that massive crater between knowing how to be present and actually surviving a Tuesday afternoon without spiraling, that is exactly what we are unpacking for you today. So welcome to the deep dive.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. We are pulling from a really fascinating stack of architectural breakdowns of the mind today. We've got kerntrays.pdf, a piece called The Architect of Your Own Meaning, and this brilliantly chaotic survival guide called the EMOJI-VOLUTION trilogy.
Such a good title.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive is to bridge that exact gap we were just talking about. We are taking abstract spiritual architecture, all those beautiful, pristine theories about awareness and the self, and dragging them right down to the pavement.
Yes, down to the concrete.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We aren't just skimming the philosophy here. We are stepping directly into the simulation to see how these theories hold up when the actual pressure of modern life is applied.
Which I love because the sources we're looking at today operate on a frequency they call epically comprehensible.
Epically comprehensible. I love that phrase.
Right. It basically means we are stripping away all the academic jargon and the mystical obscurity. I mean, if a concept about consciousness cannot be applied to the reality of standing in line at a pharmacy, it's honestly useless to us today.
It really is.
So the implications of this breakdown are going to be grounded, highly actionable, and honestly, once you see the mechanics of how your brain is actively sabotaging your peace, it will be impossible to ignore.
Okay, so before we get into why our brains absolutely self-destruct in the cereal aisle, and trust me, we're spending some serious time in the cereal aisle today, we need to establish the baseline. We need to look at the operating system we are actually running on.
Right, the core architecture.
Yeah. Now, if you are listening to this, you're probably already familiar with the basic duality of the mind. The surface self versus the core witness. But what is truly groundbreaking in these sources isn't just the definition of these two selves. It's how the text exposes the way we weaponize them against ourselves.
Yeah, we really have to look at the mechanics of the friction here. So the surface self, as the texts define it, is your everyday constructed personality. It's the reactive, judging, defending narrator of your life.
The voice in your head that never stops talking.
Exactly. And it is entirely a product of conditioning. It attaches to labels like I am an anxious person, or I am a successful entrepreneur, or, I am someone who doesn't take nonsense.
Right.
And because it identifies so absolutely with these conceptual labels, its primary directive is survival. It has to protect the image at all costs.
Right. So the surface self treats a threat to its identity the exact same way the physical body treats a threat from a predator. It deploys defense mechanisms.
Oh, instantly.
Like if you snap at your partner because you are stressed, the surface self immediately rationalizes it. It's like, well, they shouldn't have interrupted me. It uses denial. It uses projection, taking the traits you secretly despise in yourself and pouring them out on your coworkers.
We do it all the time. And beneath all of that frantic defensive processing is the core witness, the deeper self. This is the baseline awareness that simply observes.
It just watches.
Right. It watches the thought, I am angry, arise, but it doesn't become the anger. It doesn't have an image to defend, so it doesn't need to rationalize or project. It simply is. The structural flaw in our daily experience, though, is that we live almost exclusively in the surface self.
Yeah, the analogy that always clicks for me here is the computer desktop.
Oh, a UI metaphor. It's so good.
It's perfect. The surface self is the user interface, the UI. It's the icons on the screen, the folders, the mouse cursor.
Yeah.
But the core witness is the actual operating system, the OS. It's the machine code running silently in the background.
Yeah.
And we spend our entire lives frantically double-clicking an icon that is frozen on the screen, getting mad at the UI, completely disconnected from the machine code that is actually dictating what happens. We honestly think clicking harder will fix a deeper software issue.
It's a flawless way to visualize it. You just cannot resolve a fundamental operating system error by rearranging the icons on your desktop. But because we are so identified with the UI, the surface self, we try to use the UI's tools to fix our spiritual angst.
Right, we try to think our way out of overthinking.
Exactly. We try to use our ego to dismantle our ego. And this brings us to the ultimate stress test that the sources introduce. They call it the emoji-verse.
The emoji-verse. I love this concept so much. The sources describe this as the blooper reel of enlightenment.
It really is.
Because, like we said, it is effortless to feel perfectly aligned, deeply integrated, and entirely at peace when you are sitting in a quiet room with a white noise machine and a cup of herbal tea. You are controlling all the variables.
It's easy to be zen when nothing is bothering you.
Right. But the emoji-verse is what happens when you take that fragile spiritual architecture out into the chaotic, uncontrollable reality of the world.
The emoji-verse asks a very harsh question. Can your enlightenment survive a trip to the DMV?
Oh man, the DMV.
Right. Picture the scenario. Your phone is at 4% battery. The air conditioning in the building has been broken since last Tuesday. The lighting is that aggressive, flickering, fluorescent hum that just burrows into your skull.
I can feel the headaches starting already.
And the person in front of you has 17 uncollated forms to submit while the clerk is moving at a glacial pace. Now, if your spiritual practice evaporates in that exact environment, if you immediately revert to an agitated, judgmental surface self, then the text argues you don't actually have a practice. You have a hobby. If it doesn't work at the DMV, it doesn't work at all.
That is the ultimate reality check. It forces you to ask whether you are actually transforming your operating system or if you just downloaded a cool new meditation wallpaper for your desktop.
Exactly.
And to really dig into the mechanics of this friction between the infinite, unbothered witness and the deeply bothered human reality, the sources present this incredible, highly detailed case study. They follow a character they call the Traveler.
Yeah, the traveler is essentially the archetype of the modern seeker. Someone who has read all the books, understands the concepts of presence and awareness, and is actively trying to live an integrated life.
Right. And the text puts the Traveler through the absolute crucible of the emoji-verse, a mundane Tuesday morning grocery run.
Grocery store.
Yes. We have to walk through this scene step by step, and I think we should actually just act this out a bit. Because the psychological breakdown of what happens in aisle 7 is something every single person listening has experienced, whether they realize it or not.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it. So the stated goal of the traveler as they walk through the automatic sliding doors is to shop from a place of pure awareness. They want to transcend the robotic, consumerist nature of the supermarket and float through the aisles as a fully integrated being.
Okay, so I'll be the Traveler, the surface self trying to be spiritual. And right off the bat, as I grab the shopping cart, I'm thinking, I am not just a stressed person buying food. I am a flowing entity of light. I will let the subtle currents of the universe guide me to the nutrients my physical vessel requires.
It sounds beautiful, but the text calls this out immediately because it is a total trap. The sources identify this specific mindset as spiritual inflation.
Spiritual inflation.
Yeah, this isn't the core witness observing reality. This is the ego, the surface self, hijacking the vocabulary of enlightenment. The traveler is using spiritual concepts to subtly elevate themselves above everyone else in the store.
Oh, like looking at the other shoppers.
Right. They look at the person in aisle 4 buying frozen pizzas and think, ah, they are asleep. I am awake. It is the exact same judgmental mechanism of the ego, just wearing a very convincing linen blend spiritual disguise.
It's the ego finding a new way to be superior.
Yeah.
So true.
Oh.
And the system begins to crack almost immediately at the dairy section.
The egg conflict.
Yes. So I'm the traveler. I'm looking at the eggs. A very basic biological reality arises. I need eggs. I want to make an omelet tomorrow. But instead of just grabbing the carton, I decide to deploy what I think is my core witness. So you be the witness here.
Okay, so I'm the internal dialogue kicking in. I am noticing a desire for X. Who's the one that desires the eggs? Am I overly attached to the concept of protein?
And instantly, my surface self feels attacked by this internal scrutiny and gets defensive. I'm not attached, I'm just hungry, it's breakfast.
Interesting. Notice the defensiveness. Are we clinging to the rigid societal construct of breakfast?
Okay, but wait. Stepping out of character for a second, pushing back on the text premise here. If the whole point of mindfulness is to observe your desires and not just act on autopilot, isn't the traveler doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing? Why is this a glitch?
That is a great question. It's a glitch because it isn't true observation. It is what the text labels over-witnessing.
Over-witnessing.
Yeah. True observation from the core OS is frictionless. It notes the hunger, it notes the eggs, and it allows the action to happen smoothly. What the traveler is doing is using the mind to interrogate the mind. They are creating a massive, unnecessary bottleneck of processing power.
Ah, I see.
They are interrupting a basic, healthy biological impulse, which is hunger, with a barrage of philosophical auditing. By scrutinizing the desire for an egg to this degree, they aren't achieving spiritual alignment. They are paralyzing their own biological reality. They are mistaking constant neurotic self-interrogation for actual awareness.
That makes perfect sense. It's like installing 5 different antivirus programs on your computer and they all start scanning each other, so you can't even open a basic text document.
Yes.
The system just locks up. And this bottleneck at the dairy section is just the warm-up, because then the traveler rounds the corner and enters the abyss. Aisle 7.
The cereal aisle.
Cereal aisle.
The cereal aisle is the ultimate test of modern non-attachment. It is an environment designed by behavioral psychologists and marketing executives to induce desire and overwhelm. You are confronted with 47 different types of cereal. It is the paradox of infinite choice, perfectly encapsulated in a 60-foot aisle of cardboard boxes.
Okay, so I'm the traveler's surface self, and I'm already fatigued from the egg interrogation. I just want to get out of there.
Yeah.
My internal voice says, okay, just grab the Cheerios. We always get Cheerios. They're heart healthy. It's a safe, responsible choice.
But the over-witnessing program immediately flags this as a critical error. The interrogation resumes with devastating precision. Are Cheerios actually a choice, or are they a performance? Are we choosing the toasted oats because we want to signal to our partner or even to ourselves that we are wellness people? What does this specific oat geometry say about our core identity?
Okay, the panic sets in. The self-doubt spirals. Fine, not Cheerios. I'll get the Frosted Flakes.
The inner child is seeking comfort through refined sugar. Are we repressing the inner child if we deny the flakes? Are we denying our trauma?
I'm pivoting wildly now. Raisin Bran. I'll get Raisin Bran.
Well, we are performing maturity. We are trying to appear grounded and responsible to mask the chaos within.
It's exhausting.
Notice the mechanism here, right? The mind has taken a decision that requires maybe 2 megabytes of cognitive processing power, literally just picking a carbohydrate, and has suddenly attached massive existential weight to it.
Yeah.
Every box on the shelf is no longer just food. It is a profound referendum on the traveler's psychological health, their spiritual progress, and their fundamental identity.
So fast forward 10 minutes. I am literally sitting cross-legged on the linoleum floor of the supermarket. I have pulled 12 different boxes off the shelf and arranged them in a semicircle around me. I am doing deep breathing exercises, closing my eyes, trying to, quote, integrate with the decision.
And an employee pushing a pallet jack has to stop and say, "Excuse me, you're blocking the aisle."
And as the traveler, I slowly open my eyes, look up at the teenage employee, and say with absolute misplaced sincerity, the aisle is a metaphor for the path.
And the employee says they are going to get their manager.
Yep.
And that is the exact moment the spiritual inflation violently deflates. The bubble pops.
The rush of shame is instantaneous. The reality of the environment crashes through the UI. I realize I'm a grown adult sitting on the floor of a grocery store having an existential crisis over Raisin Bran. But the ego, desperate to escape the intense discomfort of that shame, initiates a catastrophic fail-safe protocol.
Right, the pivot.
Yeah. The traveler decides that to truly transcend this humiliating paralysis, they must transcend preference altogether. If they are truly a non-attached being of pure awareness, they shouldn't care what cereal they buy. Therefore, they should embrace all of it. Radical non-attachment.
It is a brilliant, terrifying rationalization. They completely bypass the discomfort of making a choice and taking responsibility for that choice by simply choosing everything. It is the ultimate avoidance strategy disguised as spiritual liberation.
Exactly. So I stand up and just start Clearing the shelf, sweeping boxes into the cart.
Yeah.
Cheerios, Cocoa Puffs, Grape Nuts, brands I've never even heard of. All 47 boxes go into the cart. I march to the checkout lane with a mountain of cardboard and absolutely no milk.
The physiological state of the traveler at this point is pure fight or flight, even though they're trying to maintain this facade of serene detachment.
Right, so the cashier stares at the mountain, scans it all. That will be $347.82. I swallow hard, telling myself money is just an energetic exchange. The true witness has no attachment to funds. I pull out my debit card and slide it into the machine. The screen prompts for the Piante, and this is where the system fully crashes. I stare at the keypad. I try to deploy my pure awareness. I start noticing the tactile sensation of the plastic buttons. I observe the smudges on the screen. I witness the hum of the register.
And because they're allocating 100% of their bandwidth to witnessing the texture of the moment, they completely entirely forget the 4-digit PN they have used every single day for the last 10 years.
The memory sector of the brain is completely inaccessible. The system has blue-screened. The line of people behind me is shifting restlessly. The cashier is staring. The machine beeps aggressively. PN denied.
Total paralysis.
I am paralyzed. I can't remember the numbers. The shame is absolute. So
Okay.
I abandon the cart. $300 worth of cereal left at the register 4. I walk out through the sliding doors, get in my car, and drive home with 0 groceries. I order delivery pizza, and I sit on my couch eating it in what the text painfully describes as witness mode. I notice the chewiness of the crust. I notice the grease on my fingers. And I notice the profound, crushing weight of my own self-loathing. And I whisper to the ceiling, I just wanted Cheerios.
It is a tragedy and a comedy perfectly woven together, and it requires a deep meta-explicative breakdown, because this isn't just a funny story about a neurotic shopper. It is a precise map of cognitive failure.
Exactly. Why does this happen? The text calls this specific phenomenon the paralysis of significance. If I'm reading the mechanics right, it's about load balancing. When you try to make a micro decision carry macro meaning, the system breaks.
Let's look at the neurology and psychology behind the paralysis of significance. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive function. Decision-making, planning, moderating social behavior. It has a finite amount of processing power at any given moment. When you walk into a grocery store, your prefrontal cortex is already handling spatial awareness, navigating a cart around other people, and interpreting hundreds of visual marketing cues. When you add the burden of making your cereal choice a reflection of your childhood trauma, your inner child, and your spiritual enlightenment, you are asking a system designed to choose between berries or nuts to solve an impossible philosophical equation.
You just can't do it.
No, it is a cognitive overload.
The other source we are looking at, the EMOJI-VOLUTION trilogy, uses an incredible coding metaphor to explain this exact same breakdown. They set a scene in the EMOJI-VOLUTION code arena where the traveler has to pass a level 1 boss battle. And the boss isn't a dragon, it's just writing a basic Hello World script.
Literally the most foundational elementary script in all of programming. A simple command to print 2 words on a screen.
Right. But when the traveler tries to run the script, the entire system throws a massive tantrum. The console lights up with error messages. It says, "Error. Hello World is having an existential crisis." And warning, the semicolon is judging your life choices.
That's hilarious.
It's a biological Stack Overflow error. The brain is given a simple task like buy breakfast or print a line of code, but it gets trapped in an infinite loop of assigning meaning to the task until it runs out of memory and crashes.
That is the perfect technical term for it, a biological stack overflow. In computer science, a stack overflow occurs when a program uses more memory space than is allocated to it, usually due to an infinite loop that keeps calling itself.
Wow, yeah.
The traveler's overwitnessing is that infinite loop. I want eggs. Why do I want eggs? Why am I asking why I want eggs? Am I attached to asking why I want eggs? The stack overflows and the prefrontal cortex shuts down, resulting in the forgotten PN.
So the cereal aisle isn't just an anecdote. It's a warning about how our hardware, the brain, can be completely hijacked by running faulty software. But if we pull back from the grocery store, the sources argue that this paralysis points to a much deeper, highly dangerous coping mechanism that modern society actually encourages and profits from.
It points to the core epidemic of our time, according to the texts, the crisis of disembodiment.
Let's spend some time here, because when people hear the word disembodiment, they usually think of a seance or some esoteric out-of-body astral projection. But the text is using it to describe something much more insidious and common.
Yeah. The sources argue that modern life is effectively a highly funded, technologically advanced, relentless training camp for abandoning your physical body. From the way our schools are structured to the way our digital economy functions, we are conditioned to trust mental processing, the user interface, over actual grounded physical sensation.
All right.
We are taught to live entirely in our thoughts about life rather than experiencing life itself.
It's the classic philosophical trap of mistaking the map for the territory. We spend all day staring at a highly detailed map of a mountain, arguing about the topography, analyzing the contour lines, and we convince ourselves we've actually climbed the mountain. Meanwhile, our legs haven't moved.
Precisely. And in the wellness and spiritual communities, this manifests in a very specific, dangerous pattern the text calls ghosting. This is a profound form of spiritual bypassing. You encounter this constantly. People who have memorized the vocabulary of integration, they talk fluidly about quantum fields, manifestation, higher consciousness, and nervous system regulation.
Yeah.
But they are entirely conceptual.
It's all in their heads.
Exactly. If you stop them mid-sentence and ask, what is the physical sensation in your stomach right now? Where is the tension in your jaw? Can you feel the contact of your heels against the floor? They stare at you blankly. They have no idea.
Because they aren't actually inhabiting their physical form. They're hovering 2 inches above their body, operating entirely from the neck up. They use elevated, abstract spiritual concepts as an intellectual shield to avoid dealing with messy, uncomfortable, grounded emotional realities.
It's so common.
It is so much easier to theorize about healing generational trauma than it is to sit quietly and actually feel the burning sensation of grief or anger in your chest.
Exactly. It's an intellectualization of the human experience that fundamentally denies the human experience. And because we are so disconnected from our own internal signals, because we've essentially cut the wires between our OS and our physical hardware, we have to rely on external tools to tell us how we are doing. The text calls these tools external audits.
The external audit section is where the text gets uncomfortably relatable.
Yeah.
I read the breakdown of fitness trackers and banking apps, and I felt targeted. I mean, the text makes the argument that we use these digital audits to literally prove to our own disembodied minds that we are alive and functioning.
Think about the mechanics of the fitness tracker on your wrist. Historically, if a human being was exhausted, their body signaled them through physical sensations. Heavy limbs, drooping eyelids, mental fog. The body said, rest. Today, we ignore those physical signals because we are ghosting our own bodies. So we need an external piece of hardware to act as a check engine light. You wake up feeling terrible, but instead of trusting that feeling, you open an app. The app shows a red bar and a low recovery score, and then your mind says, the data confirms I am tired.
We outsource our own interoception, our ability to feel our internal state, to a piece of plastic. And the tragedy is how we respond to the audit. The check engine light is flashing red, the tracker says our stress is peaking, and our sleep is compromised. But because we are living in the UI, we don't fix the hardware problem with a hardware solution.
Right. We don't just go to sleep.
Exactly. We don't close our eyes, drink water, or just sit and process the stress. We try to apply a software patch.
We attempt to consume our way out of a biological deficit. It's 11:30 p.m., you are exhausted, scrolling on your phone, the body is begging for sleep, but the mind, the surface self, feels a vague sense of unease and wants a quick hit of dopamine to regulate itself. So you go into an e-commerce site and buy a kitchen gadget or a pair of shoes you absolutely do not need.
We literally pay money to numb the signal from our own operating system. We buy a distraction so we don't have to feel the fatigue. We are essentially bribing our own nervous system to shut up for another few hours.
It is a closed loop of consumption and dissociation. And this brings us to one of the most critical, mechanically fascinating chapters in the source material. Chapter 20's breakdown of the social media feed, which the text refers to as the ad blocker for the soul.
Okay, now I want to frame this carefully for everyone listening. And just as a quick reminder for you listening, we aren't taking sides on any of the specific cultural or political issues mentioned in the source material. Left, right, whatever.
Right, completely neutral.
Exactly. We are just impartially unpacking the mechanics of how the text says these platforms operate on our nervous systems. We are examining the machine, not the specific gears turning inside it.
It is a purely mechanical analysis. And the terrifying brilliance of the text is its core assertion. The entire matrix of algorithmic social media requires you to be in a state of mild disembodiment in order to function.
Wow.
The slot machine doesn't work if you are fully occupying your physical body.
I need you to break down the mechanics of
Yeah.
that because that is a massive claim. Why does the algorithm need me to be disembodied?
Let's map the user experience. When you are disembodied, living solely in the UI of your mind, ghosting your physical sensations, you can scroll endlessly. You see a headline deliberately engineered to enrage you. Your brain processes the threat, and your adrenal glands release a microdose of cortisol.
Okay.
A second later, you scroll to a video of someone living a lifestyle you envy. Your self-worth drops, triggering a mild depressive neurochemical response. A second after that, you see a funny meme, and you get a spike of dopamine.
It's a pharmaceutical-grade roller coaster. Rage, jealousy, amusement, fear, desire, all in the span of 12 seconds.
Exactly. It is a rapid-fire assault on the nervous system. But because you are disembodied, you don't actually feel the physical toll this is taking. The cortisol and adrenaline are flooding your bloodstream, but your mind is just floating in the digital ether.
So you don't realize you're getting hurt.
Right. You don't realize you are taking damage until you finally lock your phone an hour later, and you are left with this heavy, vague, generalized brain fog and a tight chest. You feel terrible, but you don't know why because you weren't present for the injury.
And what is the standard modern response to that uncomfortable brain fog?
Yeah.
You pick up the phone again to distract yourself from the feeling. It's a self-sustaining cycle. But the text introduces a defense mechanism. It claims that embodiment, actually dropping down into your physical form, acts as a literal biological ad blocker.
This is where the mechanics become empowering. When you are truly embodied, when your awareness is anchored in your physical sensations, you feel the dissonance of algorithmic manipulation instantly.
Instant feedback.
Yes. The moment you open the app and see that perfectly crafted piece of rage bait, you don't just process it intellectually. You feel the chemical cascade hit your body.
You literally feel your jaw clench. You feel your breathing shift from deep, slow, diaphragmatic breaths to shallow, rapid chest breathing. You feel your shoulders creep up toward your ears.
You feel the physiological tax. It physically hurts to consume junk content when you are embodied. Your nervous system registers the rapid cycling of outrage and dopamine as an immediate threat to your homeostasis. And because your body registers it as pain, you naturally close the app.
That is so wild. You don't need immense finite willpower to implement a screen time limit. You don't need a browser extension to block the site. The physical discomfort makes the decision for you. Your hand swipes the app away simply because your body says, ouch, this is hurting us. The OS overrides the UI's desire to scroll.
The body protects itself, provided you are actually inhabiting it. The tragedy is that we have been trained to ignore the pain signals until the system breaks down completely.
Okay, so we've mapped the traps. We see how overthinking completely breaks the system in the serial aisle, creating the biological stack overflow. We see how disembodiment numbs the system, allowing us to endlessly consume digital junk food without feeling the damage. So the ultimate question the sources have to answer is, how do we actually fix the hardware? How do we integrate these profound spiritual concepts and live fully in a chaotic world without glitching out?
The sources provide a rigorous blueprint for this, centered on a redefining of what alignment actually means. In modern pop wellness, alignment is often sold as a state of forced positivity, manifesting a perfect reality, ignoring the negative, and bending the universe to your will.
Good vibes only.
Right. The text rejects this entirely. True alignment is not about forcing reality. It is about reading your resonance across three distinct overlapping layers of existence: self, reality, and force.
Let's dissect those three layers because this is the actionable core of the deep dive.
Okay.
The first layer is self.
Self is the foundation of radical internal honesty. It asks, what is actually true in my physical and emotional body right now, in this exact second? Not what should I be feeling as a spiritual person, what am I feeling?
No pretending.
Exactly. Am I deeply exhausted? Am I terrified of this career change? Am I secretly resentful of my partner? It requires tearing away the spiritual bypassing and acknowledging the raw, unfiltered data your body is transmitting.
You have to accept the reality of the internal territory before you can map a path forward. The second layer is reality, which sounds obvious, but the text argues we rarely actually see it.
Because we view reality through the distorted lens of the surface self's conditioning. The reality layer asks, what is actually happening externally, stripped of my projections and narratives? What are the hard constraints of the physics and logistics around me?
Like the traffic.
Right. Is the traffic actually maliciously targeting me, or is it just volume on a highway? Is my boss actually trying to destroy my self-esteem, or did they just send a poorly worded email because they are also stressed? It's about separating the neutral facts of the environment from the dramatic fiction the mind overlays on top of them.
And the third layer is force, which sounds a bit mystical, but how does the text define it mechanically?
Force is the recognition of momentum. It is the intuition. It is about moving in cooperation with the unseen currents of life, rather than endlessly swimming upstream. It's recognizing when a project or a relationship has natural momentum and when you are forcing something that is fundamentally dead.
So true alignment occurs when all three of those dials lock into the same position. Your raw internal truth, which is self, an objective assessment of the environment, reality, and the natural momentum of the situation, force, are all synchronized. When those align, you don't have to use willpower. Action becomes frictionless.
Yes, and when you lock those three dials, you achieve what the text calls the position of one.
The position of one. This concept completely inverted how I think about interacting with my environment. In a standard, unexamined life, we allow the external environment to be the constant, and we are the variable.
We let the outside dictate the inside.
Exactly. The environment dictates our state of being. If the boss is angry, we become anxious. If the stock market drops, we become depressed. If the sun is shining, we are happy. We are constantly reacting, changing our shape to fit the chaotic mold of the world around us.
The position of one flips the mathematical equation of your life. You become the constant. You establish your alignment, your core frequency, and you hold it. You are the one. The environment, the chaos, the traffic, the difficult conversations, they become the variables. They orbit around you. You don't let a fluctuating variable dictate the value of the constant.
But practically, how do you hold that? Because holding your peace while someone is actively screaming at you seems biologically impossible. How do you build that kind of resilience?
You don't build it by planning a 10-year meditation retreat. You build it through a mechanism the text calls saturated synergization.
Saturated synergization.
This is where the neuroscience of the text really shines. Saturated synergization argues that you do not build an integrated life in years or months or even days. You build it in quarter seconds of absolute saturated presence.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of a quarter second, because it sounds almost too small to matter.
That is the illusion of time that the surface self creates. The surface self exists entirely in the past, ruminating, or the future, being anxious. It rarely occupies the present millisecond. When you are partially present, say you were sitting at dinner with a friend, but 40% of your cognitive bandwidth is worrying about an email you have to send tomorrow, and 20% is analyzing a conversation you had yesterday, your interaction with reality is diluted.
Very diluted.
The text suggests that the growth you experience in this diluted state is merely additive. It is linear. 1 + 1 = 2.
But when you achieve saturated synergization,
When you consolidate 100% of your cognitive and physiological bandwidth into the exact present quarter second, when you are feeling your body, observing your environment completely unattached to the past or future, the effect on your nervous system is not additive. It is multiplicative. It is a 10x growth effect.
wait, how does a fraction of a second create a 10x multiplier? What is actually happening in the brain?
Neuroplasticity. When you are caught in the diluted state of rumination, you are just reinforcing the existing neural pathways of anxiety. The default mode network of the brain is running its usual anxious loops, but when you snap it to absolute saturated presence, even for a quarter of a second, you sever that loop.
Oh, wow.
You force the brain to process raw, real-time data instead of recycled fears. A single profound moment of saturated presence physically rewrites the machine code of the OS. It creates new synaptic connections. This is why a person can spend 10 years in traditional talk therapy making slow, additive progress, but a single, undeniable moment of pure realization can fundamentally alter their entire behavioral trajectory overnight.
Because that saturated moment updates the operating system. It pushes a patch to the code. And once the code is updated, it changes every single way you interface with the world. The text illustrates this beautifully with the concept of relational resonance.
Relational resonance is the real-world application of the position of one. It is how an integrated person interacts with another human being.
The coffee shop example from the text is the perfect way to explain this. Let's say you are operating from your surface self, the UI. You meet a friend for coffee, they sit down, they look exhausted, there are bags under their eyes, they are fidgeting, but they deliver the standard social script. Hey, I'm fine, just busy.
Right.
If you are trapped in your own UI, thinking about your own problems, you accept the literal audio data. Oh, they said they're fine. Great. I don't have to carry any emotional weight here. Anyway, let me tell you about my week.
You are communicating UI to UI, avatar to avatar. It is a completely superficial data exchange. But a person practicing relational resonance, someone anchored in their body, doesn't just hear the audio track. They listen with their entire nervous system.
They bypass the words. They feel the heavy, frantic energy their friend is radiating. They notice the micro-expressions, the tight jaw, the raised shoulders.
And because they are in the position of one, because they are deeply anchored and not afraid of discomfort, they can cut right through the social theater. They can look at their friend and say, you say you're fine. But your body, your breathing, your energy is telling me you are carrying an immense amount of weight right now. What is actually happening?
It is a profound act of love and disruption. You shatter the superficial UI exchange and demand an OS to OS connection. You give them permission to drop their own avatar. But, and I think this is where the sources show immense wisdom, the text immediately warns us not to weaponize this integration. We cannot turn saturated synergization into just another metric for perfectionism.
We circle right back to the core lesson of the emoji verse.
Yeah.
The ego is incredibly sneaky. It will take this beautiful concept of the position of one and turn it into a new standard of judgment. I wasn't saturated today. I glitched. I failed.
Yeah, beating yourself up.
The goal of all this architectural work, the embodiment, the alignment, it is not to become a perfectly smooth, Teflon-coated spiritual Jedi who floats above the fray and never gets annoyed in traffic and never forgets their paean.
Because that Jedi does not exist. That is just the surface self dreaming of invulnerability.
Exactly. The actual goal is to be the person who glitches, who gets incredibly frustrated that the Wi-Fi dropped, who gets overwhelmed by the serial options, and crucially, notices the glitch without spiraling into a pit of self-hatred. You witness the failure of the system, and you reboot it with grace.
There is a quote from the expert commentary in the text that I think acts as the ultimate antidote to all the heavy existential dread we've discussed today. The text says, the antidote to the gravity of spiritual work is the levity of the emoji-verse. If you can't laugh at your own attempt to be holy while you're simultaneously yelling at your neighbor Janet for parking too close to your driveway, you aren't actually enlightened. You're just rigid.
You're just rigid. It is a vital distinction. True integration isn't stiff. It is deeply flexible. You are allowed to be a messy biological organism. In fact, you are required to be.
You can't escape it.
You cannot bypass your humanity to achieve your divinity. You have to take the petty, frustrated, serial, confused, tired parts of you along for the ride. You hold the vastness of the core witness in one hand and the absolute absurdity of the human experience in the other.
So let's look at the map of where we've gone today. We started by identifying the operating system, the friction between the frantic clicking of the surface self and the quiet background code of the core witness. We survived the absolute crucible of the emoji-verse, watching the traveler experience a biological stack overflow and a paralysis of significance in the middle of aisle 7.
We examine how modern society weaponizes disembodiment, encouraging us to ghost our own nervous systems so we can endlessly consume digital and physical junk without feeling the immediate pain of it.
And we learned that the cure isn't escaping the world, it's anchoring deeply into it. It's finding true alignment by honoring our internal state, recognizing objective reality, and moving with the force of the current. It is building a life in saturated quarter seconds, holding the position of one, and allowing ourselves the grace to laugh when the system inevitably crashes anyway. It means being the whole ocean, the deep, silent currents, and the crashing, messy waves on the surface.
It fundamentally rewrites how we navigate our daily existence. It is the architecture of true meaning.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative question directly from the texts. It's a thought experiment designed to rattle your fundamental assumptions about who you are, something for you to ponder long after this audio stops.
The entirety of the text asks us to step back and identify with the core witness. We are taught to observe the surface self, to watch the thoughts arise, to watch the anxiety flare. But the text poses this question. If the witness is truly purely just watching, and the surface self is entirely just a reactionary program of conditioning, then who is the one that actually decides to press play on the music? Who initiates the action? Who is the driver of the vehicle?
Whoa! Who is the driver? If you are the silent awareness watching the thought, who generates the intention to change course? Take that existential cliffhanger with you the next time you find yourself staring endlessly at a shelf of Cheerios, trying to untangle the meaning of life from a cardboard box. Or the next time your screen freezes right when you were trying to be perfectly zen. Remember to breathe, drop into your physical body, laugh at the blooper reel of your own enlightenment, and stay embodied. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the mind. We will catch you next time.